So
Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of College Hockey Talk. On today's podcast, I'm joined by incoming junior on the Harvard women's hockey team, Eva Dorr. Eva, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, and how's everything going?
Hi, Matt. Thank you so much for having me. Everything has been pretty good so far. Just enjoying the summer. I'm home in Pittsburgh right now for like the next 2 weeks pretty much. And then I'm going to be up in Boston for the summer. So just enjoying my time with my family and being at home. But thank you so much for having me.
I'm excited to have you on as well. And how has your off season been going so far? Do you have any plans this summer, whether it's hockey related or not?
Yeah, so this summer will be my first summer training in Boston, which I'm really excited for. It's very new. I'll be able to lift on campus with our trainers at the PD, which I'm excited for, Coach Frage. And then on ice, I'll be doing a few things around Boston with some teammates that are in the area and, doing some skills, doing some competition. And it's nice because there's so many teams in Boston and girls that are local. So it'll be nice to kind of get that competition with girls from across the area. So I'm looking forward to it.
How many of your teammates are also going to be coming to Boston this summer and doing training with you?
So I think it'll just be kind of the local girls. So we have probably, I want to say like 5+ in Boston already. So I'll probably be catching with them at the rink at some point.
Nice. And in regards to your training, what are you and your team specifically want to work on this off season to prepare for the upcoming year?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just building on our confidence from last season that we were building because, we were a lot more of a younger team last year because we lost a lot of graduating seniors. And so it was just a lot of our first times like getting that initial exposure to college hockey. And so we were just trying to build that confidence this year. And I think this summer it's really just now establishing that and then building the skill set from it now that we have that foundation laid.
Well, I now want to sort of transition and talk about the beginning of your hockey career and sort of work all the way up to where you are today. So obviously you're from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. So talk about growing up there and how'd you start playing hockey?
Yeah, so Pittsburgh has been just the best place to grow up. I'm really fortunate to have two older siblings that have kind of paved the way for me. And I grew up in a town where sports are very big, hockey's very big in Pittsburgh. So I always was watching the Penguins growing up. And, I started off doing the sports rotation that you do when you're little and trying different things. But my dad always built an ice rink in our backyard. So I was very lucky with that. So I learned to skate at age 3. And then I actually started with figure skating, and then I saw my brother playing hockey once he got into it. And of course, I do everything he does, so I wanted to play. And so I went out with his team a few times. Finally, my parents let me join. So I started playing boys hockey in Pittsburgh when I was 6, and then ended up playing that until checking started. That's around 12. But I transitioned to girls hockey when I was 8, and I played for the same team until I was 19 or 18, graduated high school.
Who was your favorite player growing up? I'm assuming it's someone on the Penguins. So
For sure.
anyone who was like one guy that you like really like to watch, I guess, as a kid.
Yeah, so Sidney Crosby's been my idol my entire life. I mean, since I was able to write, I would put him on my Christmas list at the very top, just saying I wanted to meet Sidney Crosby. And once that happened when I was in 4th grade, so after that, it was off the list. But he's remained my favorite player of all time ever since.
How'd you get the chance to meet him?
So funny enough, I was the Penguins like junior reporter in 4th grade, which my dad found through, I don't know, like Twitter, their website or something. And he was like, "Yeah, you should audition for this." So I submitted a reel on YouTube and ended up like going through and making it. So I was their like little reporter and I'd come out for games and little events. And they do this big golf tournament every year. And I got to go to that and he was there and they plot me on a golf cart and I got to sit and talk to him. And I have a picture still of me like gripping my pen and my microphone in my hand, just like in awe of him.
That's
That
that's
was
really
like the
cool.
coolest thing.
Yeah, he's awesome. The fact that he's still as successful as he is now, like at age
Yeah,
like 36, is pretty unbelievable. I think that's what makes him such a fun player to watch is like how sort of sustainable and how he maintains his greatness at such a older age. It's just you don't
completely.
really see that often in professional sports with the amount of transition that sort of takes place.
Completely. And it's so weird hearing you say his age because I'm like, I feel like he's stuck at age 24 where I first like discovered him and I always like have him pinned at that age. But that's crazy. I mean, he has maintained that all those years.
Have you met other famous pens like Malkin and Letang?
Yeah, so I met Malkin. They have a like pregame for kids or preseason game for kids. And my boys team got to come out to that game. And at the very end, I was on the ice with Malkin, like interviewing him. My whole team was behind me in the crowd. That was like the coolest thing ever. But I also met with Fleury, Matt Cook, Dupuis, Kunitz. Actually, not Dupuis, I don't think at that time. Kunitz. And Fleury gave my brother a signed stick because they both went to that Quebec tournament. So that was like the coolest thing.
That's awesome. Yeah, you're bringing some memories back for some of those old
I know,
Pens players.
right?
Chris Kunitz. The only thing I know from him now is Ryan Whitney got traded for him. That's sort of what he's mostly well known for today.
Yeah, crazy, crazy. And at one point, like Iceberg came to my school, and who else? Oh my God, I'm forgetting their name. But it was just like the coolest, one of the best years of my life, like getting to meet all my idols and like.
Yeah, that's awesome. Was it cool like to see the Pens? Because obviously they won in 2009, and then they had that little run few years ago in 2016, 2017. What was it like sort of seeing that dynasty sort of take place in two different eras? Because like you were mentioning, like Kunitz, Pasquale Dupuis, but then 2016, 17 was Matt Murray, Jake
Yeah.
Gensel, those type of players. So I think it's kind of cool to see sort of the core switch a little bit. But obviously Malkin and Crosby were there.
Yeah, it was surreal. I mean, getting to go or our team like going so far both of those years and watching it play out with like our big parade downtown and just like the Pittsburgh pride of all of that happening. But I have such loyalty to that like core group of players. It's weird seeing Fleury on different teams and like seeing him at Vegas. I was like, this isn't right. Like he's a Penguin forever. So it's definitely weird.
Yeah. Well, sort of getting back to your career a little bit. So you grew up in an athletic family. Your brother is a goalie for Penn State men's hockey, and your two cousins also play with college lacrosse, according to your bio. So I just want to ask, do you learn anything from one another when you guys talk about your game, and do you learn anything from watching each other play their particular sport, specifically with your brother, because he's a goalie, so he probably has a different perspective on the game than you might.
Completely. No, that's a great question. I think growing up, it was really nice getting my brother's perspective because it's not necessarily like a parent or a coach or a teammate. It's, someone who's like on the receiving end. So I'd always like shoot pucks on him or we'd shoot pucks together in the driveway. So I feel like we've been on the same track our whole life. And, he was kind of tossed around between high school. He went to 4 different high schools for hockey and then played juniors and was on 7 different teams across the United States. And so I'd always talk to him. And if I was in a rut feeling like, I need to work on this part of my game or that, he talked to me about where he was. And I just remembered, that he has such resilience with battling between different teams and adjusting to different atmospheres. So I always feel like I looked up to him in that regard and just wanting to talk to him as much as I can to get that from him. But it's been so nice having someone in the same realm because we can relate about our schedules and trying to get through finals when it's really tough with the season, but it's been the greatest thing.
Now, normally the youngest sibling usually has to be goalie because at least I'm the youngest sibling,
Yeah,
so sort of they like would always put me on pads and stuff, and they would
right?
shoot on me. Why did he want to be a goalie? Like, did you make him wear the pads, and is that how it got
Oh
started?
my God. I wish I could say the narrative was that I made him be goalie, but I don't know how it started, but he wanted to be goalie. He just kind of has that screw loose, And
Yeah,
I would wear his goalie equipment, and he's a backwards goalie, so I became a backwards goalie when I was in net. And I think whenever we were on the backyard, I'd end up in goal and he would end up playing. And so I try to have that happen on my team, my guys' team. I told my coach, I was like, I want to play goalie, like put me in. We're age 6 at that point, like nothing's definitive. You're all kind of rotating. And my coach was just like, no, I see you as a forward. And I was like, please. And he never let me, which I'm grateful for now, but I still have that in the back of my mind that I want to be a goalie.
do you think you could ever do it like in college? Like, say like an emergency situation happened, was that something like you could do, or is I
Oh
wonder
yeah.
what that's like because I saw Minnesota Duluth, they had to do it like a couple years ago, and I thought
Yeah.
that was crazy.
Oh my God, I would do it in a heartbeat. I should put that in the back of my coach's mind, be like, hey, put me in if we ever need an extra goalie. It'd be so fun.
Because I know they don't have e-bugs in college hockey, so like it has to be someone on the team. I would assume that has to like put on the pads if necessary. But usually it's fine because you have 3 goalies, so it's usually not a big deal. But it's something I always like to think about.
Our one goalie, Daisy Boyton, she's just a really athletic person. She plays lacrosse like in her free time and she can pick up any sport and do well. But sometimes when we have free ice, she'll put on some player skates and get out there and she does so well. So we always say like, hey, if we ever need to, let's like let's rotate. Let's see what can happen.
That's awesome. Well, before Harvard, you played for the Pittsburgh Penguins elite team. How'd you get the opportunity to join with that team? Because from everyone that I talked to who's played there, it's always Kathy Pippy. Like she's like sort of the godmother of
Yeah,
hockey in Pittsburgh.
she completely is. She was the director of operation for Penguins Elite whenever I entered, and my parents were able to find out about Pens through, the Pittsburgh Hockey Network, which is very small, very tight knit. And so even though I started with boys, once I found out about Pens, I tried out and was lucky enough to get on that team at a young age and establish those friendships with those teammates who, there's like a core 8 of us that started at that age and went all the way to college. And so that was really nice to start super young with them. But Pens was just a great opportunity to be able to get that exposure to, college coaches and those recruiting tournaments that are really big. So I'm so grateful for being able to have my parents find Pens when I was so little.
Now, how did your experience with Penn's Elite help prepare you for college hockey with Harvard?
Yeah, so Pens was always a really competitive environment. I mean, travel started, I want to say like age 10. There was some trips to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and it started to ramp up. And definitely by middle school, I was getting used to, talking to teachers before you go away for the weekend, if you have to miss a Friday or a Monday for those long trips, and just having to balance hockey and school. And when you want to have fun in the hotel with your friends and your teammates, you have to lock away into a study room and just kind of get your work done. And being able to, I learned to not be car sick in the car when doing my work, which was huge for me. But it was just that big battle of like traveling every other weekend for hockey while also having school and having to miss homecomings and proms, but relying on your teammates and just having such a close knit family that it didn't feel like you were missing out on anything. And once that intensity really ramped up, I was able to look at the older girls from Penns that were going to, some amazing schools for hockey and use them kind of as mentors for me. But it gave me such great opportunities and experiences to travel the East Coast and Canada and even out to California. So it definitely prepared me for just that travel and balance aspect of college hockey.
So I can write in the car. I can't read. I get really car sick. How'd you learn how to read in a moving bus?
So the key is mint gum, weirdly enough.
Okay.
I probably read it online somewhere, but I found it at the right age. And once I did that, I never got car sick again, which was huge. But that was such a big battle for me when I was younger, as I would try and read or, do whatever. And I just couldn't. It just felt so nauseous. But yeah, mint gum is the key.
All right. I'll definitely use that next time I need to read in the car sometime. So,
Good try.
and obviously you're missing all that stuff. That must suck. But I guess for you, like obviously your senior year was during COVID, so the prom really never was going to happen anyway. So at
Very
least you can
true.
look back on that like in a more positive way in some regards.
Completely. Yeah, 100%. COVID definitely threw off a lot of things, but I feel like I was kind of able to get that high school experience with dances and stuff, like end of my junior year into my fall of my senior year, because like as we were talking about right before the call, that I tore my ACL end of my junior year during the cross season and was right in playoffs before the summer. And I thought it was the worst thing in the world, but it ended up like allowing me to kind of experience high school for that first bit of senior year. So it's kind of like a blessing in disguise.
I don't really miss prom. Honestly, I don't really think about it too much. It's really like the senior trip and graduation is sort of like, because I see it now with kids that are graduating high school and I sort of get jealous.
I know you missed senior prom too and all those events, right?
Yeah. Our
Yeah.
graduation, we had like a small one like outside, but it just wasn't the same.
Yeah, it totally wasn't. Ours was like a drive-through. You just
Yeah.
see one person at a time go on stage and it's like, okay, what are we doing this for?
But yeah, no, but when I want to look at some of these graduations, I was like, man, like we never got one. So I'm kind of looking forward to my college one just
Right?
because like I finally get to have like a normal graduation that like I was supposed to get 4 years ago or 3 years ago.
Completely. I feel like I never got like closure on like graduation high school. So college will be like, end of the chapter.
What's like the best memory from your Penn's Elite days when you look back on it now?
Oh my. There's so many good ones. I think my favorite's probably 2019 Nationals. We were in Irvine, California, and the whole year we were just potting for Nationals because we knew it was going to be in Cali and near the beach, and I'd never been before. So once we finally made it during regionals, that was huge. And once we were actually out there, it was just the coolest experience being in California. We have one game a day, but our like pregame walks were amidst palm trees. You come out of the rink and there's a beach, and it was just absolutely surreal. But we didn't end up winning, but our U14 team won nationals that year. So that was really cool to experience, even though I wasn't necessarily on the ice with them, but that was magical.
And like we sort of talked about, you also played lacrosse growing up and in high school, and you received some scholar awards in that sport. What was your lacrosse experience like, and how did it make you better in hockey? Because talking to coaches, I remember that a lot of them saying how they sort of miss how, I guess now a lot of people play just one sport growing up. They usually don't play multiple. And they said they sort of miss that because playing multiple sports makes you just a better athlete in general. So sort
Mhm.
of curious like what your thoughts were on all that and what it was
Yeah.
like playing lacrosse.
I loved my high school lacrosse experience. It definitely kind of had to take a backseat from hockey. So when I had to travel for hockey, I'd then come back for lacrosse. I'd have to miss some practices and stuff, which was definitely hard because you want to be with your team at all times. But I think physically, it was just really great to be able to get that like endurance and being in shape in that aspect. Because even though sometimes you might be in like lacrosse shape, you might not be in hockey shape, but having like both of those at the same time was really great for me. But just the team aspect, the lacrosse team at my high school was really close, and we just had a lot of fun. And from day one, even when we're running sprints, I remember like our seniors were just so cheerful and like cheering each other on. Whereas not that hockey wasn't as cheerful, it was just a bit more of a competitive environment because we're all trying to get recruited, and there's a lot at stakes because we all want to do that in college. But in high school, it was a bit more relaxed. We were just pawning for, state title was our biggest title we could probably achieve. So it was a bit of a different environment. So I think the biggest thing I took from that was just the team atmosphere and being a positive teammate, and just carrying that into hockey was probably what I got most from that.
Yeah, I watched the national championship game a few days ago between Boston College and Northwestern, and it's a fun sport to watch. I never really watched a lot of it growing up, but it's super fun to watch. So I'm definitely trying to get more into it.
Yeah, absolutely. I am upset because Charlotte North graduated from BC, I want to say last year, and I never got to see one of her games in person.
Oh,
I
okay.
think she's playing professionally now, but she's like absolute leader in the women's lacrosse world. So I definitely want to watch her at some point.
Well, Northwestern had some really good player. I forgot her name, but I think like if there was like a Patty Kazmaier Award winner for college lacrosse, it would definitely be one of those. Definitely her. And
Really?
Boston College was a very fun team to watch. So I
Mhm.
definitely got to try to catch one of their games sometime in person as well.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, being up in Boston, it's got to be on the list.
Oh, for sure. I'm a sports guy, so I like going to as many games as I can. So I'm with you
Love
on
it.
that.
Love
Now,
it.
one thing I wanted to ask you about was something that I found pretty interesting doing research on yourself. And you received the Joan of Arc Medallion Award for volunteer service back in November of 2019. And you seem like super busy doing this because you had to complete 150 plus hours of volunteer service. You volunteer as a referee in mite hockey tournaments. You helped run middle school and field hockey lacrosse summer camps. You also assisted special needs children and adults in blind youth hockey, and you also helped with Cindy Crosby's Learn to Skate clinic. So I just want to ask, what was it like receiving that award, and what did you learn from those volunteer experiences that you had that you think has benefited yourself being in college hockey with Harvard?
Yeah, so that was a really great experience to be able to go to those camps and just witness different realms of hockey. I mean, they say hockey is for everyone, but it really is for everyone. I was able to see that because two experiences stick out. I did a learn to skate with blind children, and that was so cool. They use a metal puck that's a little bit bigger of a disc, and there's metal components inside, so it makes noise as it goes around. And these kids we were going out with, have never been strapped into skates before, but they just went out like so willingly and just excited to learn. And their courage was something I definitely picked up from that and looked up to. And then we also were able to skate with kids who were partially paralyzed, and so they used the sleds, and we were able to play sled hockey with them, and their upper body strength was just absolutely amazing. And we ended up at the end of the volunteers skated or played against them, and they absolutely crushed us. Of course, they were so good. But just like getting to see the different realms of hockey was really cool, and I was able to volunteer with my teammates and just feel really fortunate for the hockey world and how close it is. And it was a great experience, and some of my friends from high school also were fighting for that award, and so we were able to to do some of our volunteering that was external from those hockey camps together. So I absolutely love doing that.
It also gives you some appreciation just on life in general, seeing like I think we take a lot of things for granted. I sort of realized that during COVID, like not
Mhm.
being able to go and play hockey, like that was something I took for granted all the time before the pandemic took place. And I'm assuming for you, sort of getting this chance to see those players definitely gave you some, I guess, appreciation on a lot of different things, not just in hockey, but just in life in general.
Completely. I mean, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day of practices and school and, homework and whatnot, but seeing those kids and how grateful they are just to be living and learning to play, I was definitely, taken aback by that.
Let's talk about your recruitment process with Harvard. What made you want to go there versus other schools you might have looked at? Because I know going to an Ivy League school, recruiting wise, is a lot different than probably what your brother experienced with Penn State because there's no NILs and all that stuff. So I'm just curious, what makes going to an Ivy League school sort of different in regards to the recruiting process, and what made you want to go to Harvard versus other schools you might have looked at that time?
Yeah, so my recruiting process was definitely unique in the sense that they were my number one. Harvard's been my number one since I can remember and since I even thought about playing college hockey. And my dad's side of the family's from Boston, so whenever we'd fly in, we'd always drive through campus and look at it. And we were at the Harvard bookstore one day, and there was a Harvard field hockey girl who was so tall and so strong. And my mom was like, "You could be her," and I was like, "Okay, could I?" And my grandfather bought me a Harvard hockey sweatshirt that I ended up wearing as my good luck charm to every tournament from there on out. But once I realized I wanted to play college hockey and I wanted to play it at Harvard, I sent them probably like 200 emails. I was so annoying, and I made it my mission that they knew who I was, and took advantage of, these recruiting tournaments where I didn't know if I was necessarily the top player they were going to be looking at, but I was going to make sure they saw my name on the ice and were like, "Oh, that's the girl that's been annoying us." So I'd send emails after every quarter with my my grade updates. I'd send them the schedules of my tournament, my goals, my assists, whatever it may be, awards. And then I went to their camp going after my sophomore year, summer of my sophomore year. And I think that was a really big step for them to be able to put a face to the name and see my personality off the ice. And I absolutely fell in love with the coaching staff and the girls that were at that camp. And I after that camp, I told my parents, I was like, "This is it." And they're like, "Okay, well, we can't, like, I don't know if this could, I mean, they always believed in me, but they were trying to be like, "Okay, you have to talk to other schools, figure it out," which at the time I knew where my sights were set. And a year later from then was when I got the call, and I was surrounded by like my best friends and family up in New Hampshire where my grandparents live. And so it was just absolutely magical. I mean, I was crying, the coaches on the call were crying. It was just like the coolest thing ever and a dream come true. So I'm so grateful for, even though it was very, very long of a process, I'm grateful for that.
Do you still have that sweatshirt your grandfather got you with the
Oh
Harvard
yeah.
hockey? And do you wear it sometimes? I think that's pretty cool that he got it to you when you were like a kid and now you're a part of the team.
Yeah, I still have it. It's got holes all over it. And it's tiny on me now, but I still have it. That'll hopefully be in my wardrobe forever.
Nice. Well, as a freshman, what was sort of the biggest adjustment you had to make to college hockey? Was the speed of the game, the physicality, or just the less time and space you had with the puck?
All of the above, for sure. The speed is so intense and so fast. And, coming off of the previous year with COVID, I didn't have any games and very little ice time. Wasn't able to get a whole lot of ice in Pittsburgh in terms of competing and playing games. And then the year before that was my injury. So it's coming up on a long time before I'd played some legitimate hockey. And so it was definitely an adjustment. I mean, most of our team had taken a gap year, so they were very tall, very strong, very very good at the game, and I was just looking up to them every day in practice, trying to be like them as much as I could.
How'd you shake off the rust of not playing for essentially a year and a half before you played your first game?
Yeah, definitely took a while to shake off the rust, and get the wheel spinning again. I think that off the ice, I was building a lot of strength, and on the ice, I was just building the confidence, and the mental aspect was really, really huge. So once I was able to kind of get those into place, I felt a little bit more solid.
Now talk about what it's like playing in the ECAC and just the competition you face on a weekly basis. Because I think it's the most competitive conference in women's college hockey. I think teams like 1 through 6 or 7 have a legit chance of winning the trophy and making the tournament. And I
Yeah.
don't know if other conferences can say that. So What's it like sort of playing those teams? And obviously from an Ivy League perspective, like there's so many good Ivy League teams that you get to play as well.
Yeah, for sure. No, that was well said. I mean, our competition every weekend is extremely solid, and we're never underestimating anyone or and never want to be underestimated. Because I mean, I forget exactly how many, but I want to say it was like 6 ECAC teams went through last year, something crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
I think they're all ranked. They're like 7 teams are ranked at one point.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's amazing competition, and we're lucky enough to kind of be central to all of them. So I feel like it's all kind of within like 3 hours. I mean, Clarkson's like 7. That's a bit of a hike, but for the most part, everything's pretty close to us, and it's nice to not have to fly very far distances. But it's always good competition.
I heard you have to take a boat to get to Clarkson. Is that true?
It's true. We so we drive like I forget what it is. Phil can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we drive like 3 or 4, maybe 5 hours, and then we get on a ferry on the boat. And then when we're on the ferry on the boat, we usually get off the bus because it's like rocking the whole time we're on this ferry. And that's like 30 minutes. And then we drive for another next bit.
That's
But last
crazy.
year we stopped at oh, I forget what restaurant it was. But we stopped at a restaurant right before the hotel, and we had steak and mashed potatoes, and we had a great meal. So it made the road trip definitely worth it.
That's definitely gotta be the craziest road trip story ever.
Yeah.
Bus, boat, back on a bus for 7 hours. That's
Yeah.
that's crazy. So
Yeah, no, it's a haul. You have to bring like all your pillows, blankets. I bring my big winter parka and just like get myself in a complete like huddle on the bus and fall asleep.
now technically your freshman year never happened since it was canceled due to the COVID-19 pandemic. So when did you find out you weren't having a season? And I guess what'd you do during that time when you were supposed to play games to get ready for the following season, especially since you're recovering from your ACL injury?
Yeah, so I came in my freshman fall. It was just freshmen on campus, and I took classes. And then we found out our season was canceled, I want to say October, November time. So I ended up taking a gap semester that spring, so spring of 2021. And college virtual is a very different experience, even though they try to make it as similar as they could. And I definitely wanted to have that experience with hockey and school. So I came home and I was a nanny from the time like January to August, so about 9 months. And that was awesome. I would just like work from 9 to 5, and then I'd go to the gym. Shout out to Cy Bishop Training Room out on Neville Island in Pittsburgh. They like picked me up from the bottom and brought me to get ready for college the next season. And I feel like coming in last year, I actually felt like that was my freshman year for college hockey. And that was just a great time to be home and really work on the basics and kind of build from ground zero. But it was nice because all the guys from that gym came back home from college and juniors. So we were able to train that summer, and that group kind of became family. And I come back home on breaks and holidays and see all them again and train for a little bit. So I was really lucky to get to have that and find that.
And from an academic standpoint, like you're supposed when you go to Harvard, you're supposed to like face-to-face interaction with some of the best professors in the country or even in the world. And to sort of do that through Zoom, I feel like it sort of takes away from just that learning aspect that I think makes Harvard one of the best universities in the US.
Yeah, now that I've experienced like in-person classes, it's definitely a very different experience from virtual. And even though they tried to make it as similar as possible, I didn't know half the way like things worked with classes and the best study methods, and getting to go to like in-person office hours and group study sessions and these networks that exist. I didn't even know were a thing. I didn't even know what like a Q guide was going into my freshman year, which basically like listed how a class worked and people's reviews of it. So it was definitely a very interesting experience, just like learning things on my own.
How do you balance hockey and school at such a high level? Because with an Ivy League, you probably have such a much bigger academic workload than other people in other universities. So, what's sort of the strategy that you use to sort of balance hockey and school?
I think my Google Calendar is like my Bible. That and like my agenda, I stick to those like glue. But I really rely on those, and I've gotten kind of used to being a planner. I love outlining, love making lists, and I've done that since like 6th grade, just trying to keep track of hockey and school and social, and having the month plan before it even begins is something that makes me just feel like mentally stable. I love color coordinating, getting everything outlined. It's like one of my favorite times just to kind of relax and reset is when I plan. So definitely rely on those the most.
Don't worry, I'm the same way. It's hard for me to sort of do things spontaneously. It's really
Yeah.
hard for me to do that. I'm trying to learn my best as but I need to plan things out. I definitely feel like I don't know what the word is. Maybe it's my OCD. It just feels
Yeah.
like I feel more comfortable when I like run on a schedule than when
Yes,
I'm not.
100%, 100%. And then those times you are spontaneous, it feels like that much better because you're like, I didn't even plan this. It just
Yeah,
happened.
exactly.